Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today we have a beautiful set of channelings from Quo, primarily around seeking unity, but also so much more, as in many of Quo's sessions. If this is the first time that you've listened to one of these episodes, Quo is a social memory complex, or a group of social memory complexes from a number of higher densities that communicate through a group called LL Research in a variety of channelings that are related to the raw material or the law of one. Check out my previous episodes and I've gone into further detail regarding the background to this material. In the first question, Quo is asked, Quo, today we'd like to know how we as spiritual seekers seek unity within ourselves and with others when we live in a society that holds such conflicting and mutually unintelligible truths and worldviews. Jim channeling says, I am Quo, and I'm with this instrument at this time. We greet each of you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We thank you all for your invitation to us today to join you in your circle of seeking and in your practice of the art of speaking the words of love, of light, of unity that we are honored to share with you in response to your query today. As always, we begin with a simple asking of a favor, that you might take those words that we offer, those concepts that we offer that had meaning to you, that strike a resonant chord within your being, and use them in whatever way is helpful on your spiritual path. If we speak any words or concepts that do not have a meaning for you at this time, please lay them aside with no second thought. In this way, we are free to speak to you as your brothers and sisters that have traveled and are traveling the same path as you. We do not put ourselves forth as any type of ultimate authority. If you will do us this favor, then our communication may flow more smoothly. You asked today a question that is so very pertinent to the third density illusion in which you inhabit at this time. For the third density is one which is surrounded by a veil of forgetting. Forgetting that all within it are portions of the one Creator, that all within it know that love each other is a given beyond the veil, though so much of a forgotten fact within the veil, and that the light that the creation is made of shines within each entity. For oftentimes in your illusion, as you have mentioned in your question, this light seems to either shine in a method or manner which is difficult to perceive or unable to be perceived at all. For there seems to be so much division and disillusionment, separation and anger, that is the food for many who exist with you at this time within your third density. And so how do you, as spiritual seekers of truth, as portions of the one Creator, find within yourselves the ability to seek unity with all other entities about you, even those who seem to be diametrically opposed to your spiritual perception of reality, to the ability to give and receive love freely between entities, to open the heart in acceptance and love for those who would not desire to do the same with you? This is the very heart of the seeming separation that creates your third density illusion. An illusion it is, for it is the goal, the challenge, and the path of each within this illusion to find the love in the moment, in the self, in the other. This is a great challenge, and yet this is the challenge that each of you have set before yourselves before the incarnation. For unless you have a challenge that takes you further than you have ever been before in your total soul identity, then there is no chance for growth. So you may look at the situation of separation in your illusion as an opportunity for each person, each soul, expressing itself as a personality shell within the third density illusion to grow, to expand the consciousness, to share the love, to create an understanding that we are all one, that we are all on the same path, that we are all seeking in some fashion to realize this pre-incarnative desire to move beyond seeming separation and to find, even in small moments, a kind of unification, a kind of ability to harmonize with those about us that may not feel to them to be necessary, desirable, or even possible. This is the great challenge. Beginning with yourself, there's much that you can do to find a peace, a harmony, a sharing of love with any other being, whether there is any of those qualities in existence at the beginning of the attempt or not. Within yourself, you contain the universe. Within yourself, you contain the qualities of every other entity on this earth that might be considered positive or negative. All of these qualities that are being exhibited now in your world of 8 billion souls are qualities that each entity contains within the heart of its being. For each is the one creator. There's nothing else but the one creator. So if you, in your own being, can find a manner of accepting the quality in another that seems to be so derogatory, so disharmonious, and so frustrating, and accept that quality within yourself, you have taken the first step at harmonizing your own being with itself, with the Creator, and with any other entity that you will ever meet on this lovely planet Earth, which you all inhabit at this time. Your Mother Gaia is with you all, and supports you all, and loves you all, and cares for you in ways that are inexplicable. Know that you have her support as well. Few of you upon your planet are isolated. Most are connected at various levels, to various depths in various ways, whether that be the connections among family members, among friends, among neighbors, or among the myriad online platforms where your people increasingly find connection and collision. And so you have abundant opportunity through these means, through your information ecosystems, to come face to face with other selves' perceptions. Groups of other selves, individual other selves, all become something of a clamor in the seeker's mind as they seek to stake out and understand their own perceptions. For in the sea of the multiplicity of perception, there are moving forces. These ideas and notions and orientations are not static pictures or text. They have in them psychic emotive forces, similar to that which may be found in the natural world, akin to the movement of wind, the pressure of water, the stability of earth, the transformation of fire, and so forth. These forces can exert themselves upon individuals and between peoples. This is not a negative or unhelpful scenario, for this is but energy. It is not just generic energy. It is distortions of love, distortions of the one creator with which you deal. So as a society, it is quite possible to use catalyst much in the way that an individual may use catalyst, which would mean to process these discordant energies to make their roots conscious and to integrate them, that is, these differences in perception, into wholeness, such that harmony to one degree or another emerges between peoples, such that viewpoints may be different but not produce the strife and turmoil and violence even to the degree that your peoples now experience. That this integration does not transpire very efficiently, shall we say, though good work is and will increasingly be underway, creates enormous tension and disintegration of the societal self. Portions of the mass mind, then unintegrated, become fragmented, and those entities upon your plane tuning into or resonating with a particular frequency may see those vibrating to another frequency as if living upon another planet. The distance between the two, seemingly an impossible chasm to bridge, each worldview not only seeing things differently, but holding different facts, sets, such that communication becomes quite problematic. This is one reading of your situation. It is not total nor complete, but much could be illuminated with the inclusion of an analysis from the perspective of harvest, and the way in which your mass mind is becoming conscious of itself, and the ricocheting of reflection that this creates as self faces self, and self faces other self. And in those reflections are delivered to the self, perhaps that which has not been processed, understood, and loved within the self. Moreover, those reflections deliver an invitation for growth, for breaking through and leaving behind the old containers of thought, the old loci of awareness in the lower centers, that energy may rise higher, and higher, to an increasingly broadened and universal inclusive perspective, one that rises above tribalism and other narrow modes of mentality to increasingly embrace the underlying unity of all things. Or to touch that unity, shall we say, necessarily requires the falling away of distortion, as Ra described it, or the releasing of illusions, the releasing of ideas about the self and about the world that served their purpose for a time, but in light of higher stages of understanding becomes visible as but constructs that must be released in order to expand and deepen the point of view. So to the one who seeks unity against a background or seeming schism and disintegration, one would do well to ask, we correct this instrument to go in search of those beliefs and thought forms perhaps even dear to the self, that limit the scope of the perception. One potential yardstick for this inward search, indeed the center of the yardstick, is love itself. Ask the self, is love contained within this viewpoint that I hold? Is love contained within this relationship or the way I relate to this other self? Is love contained in the intentions that I hold when I approach this discussion or this topic or this person? And do please ask the self what precisely love is, both in the abstract and the philosophical, and in the lived embodied experience of the entity. For often we find that your peoples will use the word casually and with conviction, without stopping those mental processes to turn inward to look square and center at one of the most important questions that the third density entity can ask of itself in your plane of existence. And that is, what is love? What is free giving? What does it mean for love to be without conditions? Am I truly loving those with whom I disagree? Am I loving those who I may deem as following the darkness or acting in harm to societal well-being or planetary well-being? In the seeking of unity, love is the grand central station, the hub. The positively oriented seeker does not come to unity except through love. Love first in the sense of the green ray energy center, that center which pierces beyond the human thought forms of the orange and yellow rays, which, without love, divide people into warring groups and instead begin to see beyond the personalities, the incarnational programming and conditioning, and the beliefs that the other self holds in order to reveal the truth of the other self. The truth is they are not whatever thoughts they may passionately and vociferously support, nor are they their nationality or their political affiliation or any number of other more superficial features. The other self before you is the one in its entirety. So to the seeker of unity, one must learn daily the hard lesson of learning to keep the heart open. Notice that we do not indicate that one must generate or manufacture love. In the phrase, keep the heart open, is recognition that love is already there. It already exists. Indeed, love, as the second distortion, the logos, is that which created all that there is, including the mind-body-spirit complex that you occupy. The seeker's job, then, is not to manufacture love, but to remove those blockages within the self which close the heart. They are many, but they can be located by intentional inquiry and focus within the self. Dear seeker, are you doing this work? Is love bandied about in your vocabulary and thoughts without actually examining honestly the self to see where the self is impeding, obscuring, or confusing love? It is not a case to judge the self for blocking love, for indeed each of you is for the most part born into a condition whereby you learn quite effectively from your world how to block love and how to justify that blockage. And one can live a not altogether unpleasant experience on your planet by perpetuating this blockage and never rising beyond it. But you read these words and ask this question, are a seeker of truth. So it is to you we would encourage the discovery of love within the self and between peoples. When you can learn to view the other self with this compassion, you begin the royal road toward unity. That unity does not require agreement with the truth, claims, and statements of other peoples. It does not ask acquiescence to a service which is not resonant with your being. Unity balances love with wisdom, but wisdom without love leads typically to separation. And for you who seek unity, it is precisely this illusion, separation, which you wish to dissolve. The name of that dissolving agent, or shall we say, the active ingredient in that dissolving agent, is love itself. It is a long road, one you will walk long beyond your third density experience. But it is here that you're most tested and most challenged and most brought to your knees. It is very, very hard, my friends. But by turning your attention to love, you are not spinning your wheels for no purpose. You are not expending your energy without direction, nor are you alone. When you tune to love, great forces in this universe align themselves to your being to support that very effort, to cheer you on, to inspire you, to provide you with inspiration, to help you, to open doors, to guide, and to lead you upon your way. You have support. You have energy available to you. Tune yourself to love and tune yourself. In tuning yourself to love, you tune yourself to the universe. You are in alignment with and one with the Creator, and with those multifarious illusions that imprison your minds and keep you in states of suffering and separation begin to be loosened as your wings spread and you embark upon your great flight to the one great Logos. We find that the image or phrase, rather, that we give this instrument is perhaps a newer term in your incarnation, and that is the term othering. When one is othering, one is playing so deeply in the dance of this illusion that one identifies other self as completely separate. You may see this occurring in these situations wherein unity feels out of reach or alignment seems impossible, especially when one considers the divergent truths and paths of the various other selves that exist in this illusion. For we know to play in this illusion, it can be somewhat easier to let oneself indulge in the act of othering, allow oneself what you may call a safe distance from an other self, out of the belief that self cannot identify with the other self in some fashion. Perhaps self may see this act of othering as a sort of absolution of sin or shifting of responsibility, of the self saying, I know my beliefs and my truths to stand for the highest and best good, and therefore I cannot relate to this other self, for their beliefs do not serve that same purpose. And while that may provide the unconscious self some sense of gratitude, we correct this instrument some sense of comfort in believing that self is, for lack of a better word, innocent or without fault. This act of othering is in opposition to the ultimate goal of spiritual seeking, of enlightenment, of progression, wherein all the singular, minute strands of thread combine and braid into the unity of the tapestry of this creation. Perhaps those in this circle and those who are actively seeking may not need reminder of the truth, for lack of a better phrase, that everything is one, is united, is but a tiny morsel of the Creator, a single life upon the mosaic. However, if one struggles to find that unity, to see beyond the veil, one may sit and ask oneself, when in this experience of diverging belief systems, does this other self have a heart that beats like mine? Does the other self have skin? Though perhaps a different hue, does it still have this outer shell of skin? Does this other self have a physical vehicle that is structured similarly to mine? Does this other self experience emotions like mine? Does this other self laugh and cry? Does this other self have desires and fears? In asking these questions, the seeker may find the answer is yes. These what you call opinions and beliefs, well, they may feel central to your experience and central to your identity, are merely a fraction of the entirety of self of all. This instrument is holding back a bit of a giggle, because if self were to really look at other self and make a list of differences and similarities, the list of similarities would outnumber the list of differences thousandfold. We don't mean to diminish the importance of having beliefs and values and truths, for they are all amazing opportunities for catalyst and deepening relationship with self and other self. But, and again, we with the word choice do not want to diminish them or say they are not worthy, or not true, or not important, but in the grand scheme of everything, they are somewhat arbitrary. They are merely fixtures, paintings upon the wall. They fill out the self, the fragmented extension of the Creator, to illustrate, and we use this next word without the negative connotation, but contrive a uniqueness that humorously exists within a sea of oneness. We understand that beliefs in life paths and motivations are extremely important to your people at this time. We see how closely, how dearly you hold on to these things, and we feel that it is useful, for they also can act as an ultimate guidepost to deepening one's understanding of motivating self to forward movement spiritually, for development in general. We just must also state that they exist within this beautiful, expansive, yet fine and inclusive expression of the one Creator. We must know it's extremely difficult for you seekers to reconcile truths that feel so innately opposite of your own. Hard to keep that beating heart of yours open and accepting of selves with opposing views. But as has been stated, it's the ultimate goal, keeping that heart open and finding compassion and acceptance and love for this other self, for this extension of self. We ask that you, again, in the exercise of comparing self to other self, we move forward and say that we correct this instrument. We ask that you stand in the shoes of the other self. If difficulty still exists in accepting the other self, the intention of opening the heart to the other self is a tremendous and beautiful way to begin the actual acceptance of the other self. When one can stand in other self's shoes, one can perhaps discover new facets of the other self, see in the pain in the other self, see the joy in the other self, and be able to, without the need to accept the truth of the other self, perhaps understand where that truth has roots, and then begin to see the other self as another adolescent alongside yourself, adolescent, just attempting to make sense in this illusion and have compassion and a newfound sense of gentleness in the interaction with the other self. What a powerful gift this is. We hope that you find gratitude for that gift to see what enormous possibilities exist within this unique opportunity. And we hope that the acceptance and compassion of, for rather, other self, however slow that process may be, that the seeker can see how healing and how elevating the ultimate outcome can be, how transformative, how positive. Dear seeker, you are not alone in knowing yourself. And that is true of every seeker, but might feel like the confines of your body or your mind, things that feel so unique and important to your identity and out of purview of the other entities in your illusion. We remind you that you are not so walled in. The self need not be a fortress, but rather an open market for the exchange of the gifts of thought and intellectual exercise and discussion, and ultimately giving and receiving love. Let these gates open, the gates to your heart. Open your arms to the other side with your expectation of changing their beliefs. Simply see them as another thread, another strand that weaves so beautifully and intricately into this amazing, indescribable, and all-encompassing tapestry that is the One. In another session in May of 2021, Gary asks, when we incarnate, are we allotted a certain quanta of energy? That is there a ceiling on our available energy? And whether or not such a thing exists in an infinite universe, how may the incarnate being increase the energy available for their service? Quo says, I am Quo and am aware of the query, my brother. We find in addressing queries such as this, that there is, as you might say, a double-edged quality to the terminology used. The term energy may refer to a great many things or experiences, and each seeker might identify energy in different ways. Thus, as we speak to such queries, the ambiguity can both serve and hinder, in that the words that we may offer may be interpreted in useful subjective ways, but also hinders our ability to speak specifically to such queries. We offer this note with appreciation for the query as it is asked, for this is an interesting dynamic for us to work with in such workings as this. As you consider the incarnation of an entity, the conscious seeker prior to the incarnation takes part in a selection of circumstances, distortions, and you may say abilities that will be more readily available to that entity throughout the incarnation. During this process, the entity may consider what limitations may serve in their purpose for incarnating and what specialized abilities may serve. This is true for many aspects of the entity, including what has been termed in this query energy, or as we are addressing it, the vital force available to the seeker that allows it to move and function and serve in intelligent ways on a day-to-day, week-to-week, or year-to-year basis within the incarnation. Indeed, the amount of energy available to the seeker within the incarnation is one of these aspects often chosen. Whether it is chosen in order to limit the seeker in certain ways so that it experiences a dynamic tension between a desire to serve and an ability to serve, or on the other hand, it experiences an abundance of energy but feels a lack of focus and direction. These are two examples among many of how the attribute of energy may play a role in the seeker's journey through the incarnation. When an entity assesses the energy available to it and feels a strong desire to alter this in some way, for example, to manifest more energy so that the seeker may better serve, we find that this dynamic falls into a very common, what might be called paradox for the incarnated entity, and that for an aware and conscious seeker, understanding the nature of the illusion, the will and desire to alter one's beingness and one's circumstances seems as though it should make such circumstances or beingness malleable and easily altered within the incarnation. In examining this type of dynamic, we find that for each entity and each unique circumstance, there's a certain, what could be called, amount of the desire or will that we correct this instrument that might be applied in order to bring about the desired changes. For one entity, a simple prayer and moment of silence might deliver to that entity the energy it desires to meet the next challenge and to grasp the next opportunity available to the seeker to walk its path of service. For another entity, perhaps an entity that wishes to bring a strong desire to serve with a tendency of overextending itself, the willpower necessary to bring about such a change might be much greater, for this entity has chosen as part of its lesson within the incarnation to experience this limitation. Thus you see that such an allotment of energy is seemingly finite because it has chosen by the entity to be so, and is chosen to be finite in different ways and in different quantities. This general view of energy available to the entity is indeed a primary aspect of what is chosen by the entity prior to incarnation. For within your third density, the grand choice of the entity of how to utilize its energy, where to point its consciousness, and what path it walks using the energy available to it, is a primary apex that determines the path of the entity in future densities, and the direction chosen by the entity with the energy given to it within third density garners a certain momentum. This requires that the entity consider well the energy available to it, and how it might then apply its will to use that energy intelligently, with compassion and love for the self and for all around it. Gary asks, do social media and the internet offer a window into the personal and/or collective unconscious, and what generally is the relationship between this internet and our unconscious mind? Quo says, in considering the technologies described as social media and the internet, we encourage any contemplative seeker to consider the unfolding of such technology and how your culture and society has developed from one technology to the next. Looking upon the world of the first density, you might see a very simplified understanding of how the seemingly space-time world may interact in simple ways of being moved and moving. As this unfolds into the second density, there are more complicated and intelligent ways in which the space-time manifestation of the Creator interacts. And in this density, we begin to see that the space-time realm contains not just apparently physical properties, but manifestations of thought patterns, such as the behavior of second density life, and how the animal kingdom interacts and behaves, or the plant kingdom interacts or behaves. As this progresses into the third density, the manifestation of conceptual or abstract manifestations becomes more and more complicated and more difficult for the observer to identify and influence. We see this particular among your society as you have gradually built up an incredibly complex system of social interactions based upon various aspects such as the legal realm, the cultural realms of entertainment or politics, and other sorts of obscure manifestations available to entities within the space-time. We elaborate on this in order to encourage any seeker contemplating the nature of such manifestations to see the space-time realm not just as the physical world around you and what you call matter built up in various ways, but there are other aspects of space-time that are unseen. Both those physical and non-physical aspects of space-time have correlations within time-space. and the fourth density has dawned upon your planet and made itself available to you in the time-space realm. Your space-time experience has, shall we say, struggled to catch up to this new era of energy. The manifestation of the internet and social media is a result of the beckoning of fourth density and the necessity of the entities within your space-time realm to view your experience in a holistic fashion. Thus, the advent of the internet in connecting peoples all across your planet also reveals how this connection is made in time-space as well. And so we offer, with some hesitation, a simple encouragement to entities engaging with the qualities of social media and the internet to do so with introspection on how these tools made available to you offer glimpses of the strong undercurrents of your social complexes and your collective minds that previously were relatively unseen and were made manifest in your space-time. The advent of these technologies is indeed a vast potential, and in many ways was intelligently and intentionally offered to your social complex so that you may more directly address the imbalances and distortions necessary to address, so that you may form a social memory complex of unified intention and join your planet in graduating into fourth density. Gary then asks, in anticipation of certain outcomes, quo, I have felt anxiety, sometimes bordering on dread. Conversely, in seeking some outcomes, I have felt great passion and desire. One might think that dread is an indicator to perhaps avoid a certain path, whereas desire is an indicator to pursue a certain path. Yet in retrospect, I have learned that which I dreaded was right for me sometimes, and that which I desired was not right for me sometimes. Can you speak to how we can use our emotional reactions to make choices in alignment with our pre-incarnational plan? Quo says, we begin our dialogue on this particular query by stating that these sensations you have described as dread and desire for upcoming situations can be viewed as what you may call guideposts or beacons. These sensations bring one's attention to the situation, and this is often for a particular reason, that being the potential for growth and understanding of oneself in relation to the larger self that is everything. That which you call dread, we can see is an uncomfortable experience for you in this density. That discomfort, though not desired, is, we correct this instrument, can be seen to be a gift. It can be viewed as an opportunity to deepen one's understanding of what is at play within, you may say, within the self prior to the situation. One may ask oneself in moments when in deep meditation and silence, what is dread? What is this sensation, and where from do the roots of this dread originate? In that silence, you may find that the dread is a precursor. We give this instrument the image of a flashing billboard to designate where there is a lack of acceptance, that this dread may be cluing one into a potential situation that one wishes to control or change rather than accept and embrace and forgive, if forgiveness is warranted. This sensation, though unsettling and perhaps foundation-breaking in a sensory sort of fashion, is a tremendous avenue towards, we correct this instrument, into one's own psyche and motivation. Conversely, desire can be felt as excitement, anticipation, and pleasurable. When one sees a situation upon the forecast of the incarnation with desire, one may feel the inclination to hasten the experience, quicken the moment, increase the speed of living, for the outcome is one that one had hoped for. And while that may be a great gift and balm to the soul, to have excitement and positive desire for a potential situation, it too can be an opportunity for internal and introspective understanding, for one may find that in situations where desire is at play, that perhaps oneself loses sight of all else that is around, perhaps consideration for the larger picture, if you will, falls by the wayside. One can lose focus of one's, and we use this word without connotation, but one's values. In this respect, we would direct the seeker who finds themselves navigating through situations of desire and dread to pay attention to the present moment. See those potentials that elicit excitement and desire as ones wherein perhaps the larger lens could be lost. Situations wherein desire is at play to the observant seeker could be seen as opportunities to slow one's actions and reactions and allow oneself to amble and stroll and take in the scenery, if you will, along the journey to that desired situation, allowing oneself the gentleness and tender touch that can accept other outcomes and other possibilities likewise. And in opposition, the situations that elicit dread for the observant seeker can be viewed as opportunities to look within and see wherefrom the dread is created, to open one's heart to acceptance of opportunity or perhaps unforeseen growth through this discomfort too, rather than amble and stroll along this journey to the outcome. Make careful step and consider the sights along the way. To conclude, we would state that these sensations of dread and desire that can be so productive for the observant seeker are also fleeting sensations. They will not last. Thus, it is important for the seeker, as they experience these sensations on their walk, that they remember that all is well and as it should be, that this dread and excitement are great tools for the entity within their seeking towards their end spiritual goals, but that desire and dread, while helpful tools, are simple, though they may not seem experiences that are merely facets of a great and much larger universal experience, and that steps that you take, though they may feel uncomfortable or pleasurable, are the right steps, that the footing is in truth secure, though the ground underneath may not feel as though it is. Gary then asks, when a loved one passes away, can communication still flow between us from here in the physical realm to those who have passed on to the non-physical realm, and is there any way we can become conscious of this communication? Kos says, we are aware of your query, my brother. This query is one that is close to the heart of this instrument, and she has been experiencing the very heart of your query for several years, and in an increasing way as time passes. This time in your space-time offers great and greater opportunity for those living in body to expand their entire body-mind-spirit complex in such a way as to not only become receivers of communication from loved ones in what you call spirit, but also to become so attuned so as to sense when such ones are nearby, as you may say, or within your range of attunement, so that you may also, those who are also interested in doing so, may also transmit communication to those ones as well as receive, so that you may continue what dialogue, what heartfelt communication and understanding imbued with love across what you may call the veil. This experience is one that is, in a collective sense, increasing upon your planet. This time as more of those loved ones cross to the other side in spirit form, leaving behind the body-mind-spirit complex and space-time of Earth. However, while the opportunities for exploration and growth become more expansive in spirit form, have more freedom of movement and consciousness is afforded, those in spirit form many times have great desire to remain close to those they love who remain in body on Earth, and wish to communicate that they are joyed by the idea of continuing that dialogue, of continuing to the heart and mind of those they love. Such communication may begin in the dream state of those who remain in body, which is a state in which there is no resistance or fear of such communication, and thus it can flow freely into the dream state. In meditation, also those living on Earth may set an intention to connect with, hear from, speak with loved ones on what you call the other side, and it may start with a few words or a feeling that a loved one is present. If the intention is there for such experiences to grow and the loved ones in spirit are of a like vibration, those experiences may grow and increase, especially when occurring at a set time and place for the meditative state or dream state to occur. In such times, the communication becomes an expected phenomenon in the open and receptive state. It is wise for those desiring to connect with and communicate with those in spirit to enter into what you may call a protected state, to say before communication efforts begin, prayers for protection or imagining light and love surrounding oneself, or another such spiritual practice of the light that one may feel comfortable with, always centering one's desire for communication from a place of love and of compassion and of gratitude and of peace and harmony. These attitudes of this spirit on both sides will greatly assist a most loving communication to take place. One can also ask a loved one in spirit for assistance in receiving, can also ask for what you may call a sign or an indication that they are nearby. Sometimes also there is what you may call a divine plan for such communication, or even a pre-incarnative plan, that after a loved one in the family departs from the body into spirit, that there is in existence already a plan for communicating after their passing. We can say that much more will be discovered in what you call your future, your near future, upon this topic, as more and more of your people experience this form of communication across time and space. And we'll find that as the intentions allow for such communications, that it becomes easier and easier to accomplish, and that much can be learned on both sides from one another and from the communication even after the passing from this body experience on Earth. It is one of what you might call the next vistas of our experience, the next vistas of what humanity experiences on Earth. Much guidance, love, compassion, and working out of many situations can be provided by those in spirit. There's great love there and great desire to help those that remain on Earth in body, who are working out all the day-to-day issues and experiences of daily life. Those in spirit, unencumbered by so many situations, have freedom to assist those living on Earth. Such communications can be seen as beautiful, a beautiful thing, a helpful thing, a blessing. Much can be learned from the enhanced and expanded wisdom and perspective of those loved ones in spirit. The dream state, meditation, or even walking outside among the trees and nature can invite communication from the other side. Austin asks, there are various spiritual systems and philosophies that place a lot of emphasis on the breath and ascribe a lot of metaphysical and mystical properties to the breath. But the Confederation hasn't really spoken much about the role of breath in terms of our spiritual evolution. So I was hoping that you could give the Confederation's perspective on breath and breath work and what role it plays in our lives. Ko says, we are those of Quo, and we have received and appreciate this query, my brother, for as you are aware, this instrument has made some exploration of his own upon this topic. Each in the Confederation may offer different levels and different areas of expertise, you may say. But in general, we may confirm that there is enormous utility to the spiritual seeker, particularly she or he who wishes to walk the path of adept through spiritual discipline, in the study to understanding and the modulation of the breath. The breath which you experience in the incarnate state is a primary linkage between body, mind, and done appropriately the spirit complex as well. There are a great many methods for using the breath to achieve altered states of consciousness. These methods involve retention of various levels and intensities. They involve changing the frequency of respiration, the depth of respiration, the pathway of travel, for that which you call air through the nostrils, through the mouth, and these can be combined again with changes to hand gestures, body positions, and facial structure, or shall we say musculature within the face, the throat. These on the surface may seem but mechanical details to one exploring consciousness. It is easy to dismiss the processes of the body, but we assure the seeker that this particular discipline is not contained within or limited to the body complex completely. One's experience of consciousness is tied intimately to the breath. We give this instrument simple example of some psychological states that may change the breathing from the quickened, shortened breath of anxiety to the relaxed and rhythmic and deep breath of relaxation. This instrument is aware that of that third density teacher known as Ramana Maharishi, who described the mind as the rider and the breath as the horse, and that by learning in a disciplined way to direct and control the horse, one can gain control of the mind itself. For to drill down further into this linkage between mind and body through the breath, one is well to look at the attention. For the breath is a primary anchor of the attention and a means to collect the attention into that which you call concentration. Much of your experience is one of non-concentration or concentration experienced only for a particular task or purpose or in pursuit of a particular thought complex. The common experience of those in your density is to have their attention dispersed from waking to sleep upon countless concerns. This great multiplicity of the fragmented attention greatly obscures the experiences of silence and stillness within the self. And if the mind-body-spirit complex entity is not consciously in touch with that silence and stillness, then they are not consciously in touch with their being. Instead, their attention is located and captivated by the doing, the outer world, and the endless play of the mind. This leads to identification with the mind, the formation and fortification of the illusory individual self, and the forgetting of the being. So it is that by practicing breath control, one can collect this attention and learn to reduce the dispersal of this primary conduit in the effort to bring it to a single point, that the mind and all of its activity and all of its considerable power may come to rest upon one point. And with the mind so entrained upon this one focus, then the mind becomes as the still unmoving, unrippled waters, which reflects perfectly the spacious sky above. In this reflection one sees, as it were, the being and its infinite depth and stillness. In this seeing one realizes that one is not one's thoughts, one is not one's mind, and thus do the gateways to the greater work open for the seeker. But this, as with so many things in and beyond your illusion, is a discipline. For most, this requires, as with any discipline, continued practice, persistent practice. One must learn not simply to manipulate the breath as one pulls levers on a machine, but to deepen one's presence, one's intimacy, and embrace of the self, even one's acceptance of the self. For in this discipline one will encounter not merely bodily sensations and respiratory patterns, but one will encounter one's own mental patterns as well. And all the history, all the intricacy, all the blockages and balances associated therein. One will be consciously taking steps upon the journey of realizing the self, and one will find this practice can become a very central mechanism for engaging that journey, for moving beyond the surface levels of the daily experience and into the deeper waters that tend to remain hidden without the focused attention. And we would conclude our reply by suggesting to the seeker that which this instrument has explored, and that being that discipline and science known to your peoples as pranayama. For many of your peoples have made profitable study in this area and have much fruit to share to the interested spiritual seeker. In another question, Austin asks, in a similar vein, I was hoping that you could elaborate on the role of the body. A lot of seekers, I think, have difficulty considering the body as an integral piece of the self. So I was hoping that you could help us understand how to integrate the body as part of our perspective of the mind-body-spirit complex and include it in our spiritual seeking. We are those of Quo, and we receive this query with gratitude, for it opens platform to speak upon that which, as you, the questioner, asks are aware, is a rather large but important subject, particularly in your third density, where the body complex is so often misunderstood, its functions often sought to be controlled or suppressed or denied, even as is evidenced in some of your religious systems, vilified, for the body is seen as perhaps impure, or of that realm which is of sin, or if not sin, is not of the divine. And in this large area of inquiry regarding the relationship to the body and how it may be incorporated in a positive and healthy way for the spiritual seeker, we would correct this instrument, we would start at that fundamental base as it applies to third density in general, but in particular to your planet, that being the schism between body and spirit, which posits, as we were describing, that the body is in either a fallen state or not to be trusted. It is a wicked ally which will lead one astray. Spirit is found by denial of the body in this school of thought. Each distortion in your societal complex offers to the Creator a new variant in its experience of itself. And we would not denigrate any particular thought form, but we would and can point to its error from the broader perspective. For while the body does occupy a category unto its own, such that it can be named body, which is distinct from mind, which is distinct from spirit, it is nevertheless, as with all things, a manifestation of perfection. The body is a portal to not only the self and its own personal unconsciousness, but to the Creator itself. So to the seeker aspiring toward union with the Creator, we would suggest an orientation which sees the body as a holy temple. What would be one's attitude upon approaching a structure of obvious architecture, wonder, and skill? What would be one's attitude when beholding a building built of such beauty and designed for purpose of worship and communion, and feeling the presence of the one Creator? Would one spit out their gum when inside such a structure? Would one be excessively dirty, whether we say or bring the can of graffiti? We correct this instrument, apply the can of spray paint to its walls. Would one misuse such a structure or use it for less than positive purposes? Or would reverence not necessarily the administrative codes of the building, but reverence inform the self as to the relationship of the self to this structure? Would the appreciation of the heart not inform the self of how to relate and to conduct oneself while in this building? As with all metaphors, this isn't perfect, for the body is not set in stone, but is constantly evolving, intelligent, and communicating structure. But this metaphor may offer to the seeker something of the pathway by which you call the body is ennobled. For each iota of the creation, however humble, however small, however inert, or seemingly of the material realm, which comes into contact with that which is sacred, is itself made sacred. It would be more correct to say that the sacred is revealed as being contained within that seeming object of matter. But in the limitations of your illusion, where a veil in your mind creates the friction that external objects, or that which you call matter, is not sacred, it's required that a bridge through your own perception and sacredness that you hold in your heart and being be made between you and what you would call the higher realms, and what you may call the lower realms, such as the lower is uplifted and made sacred. As you're aware, this is much to explore regarding the relationship of the body, but the seeker to work upon embracing and loving that body, even if by outer standards it is disfigured or limited in some medical or other way. The seeker is doing very positive work toward, first and foremost, the healing of the self, and toward gifting the Creator the realization of itself through the planes of that which you know as the material realm, which is your particular stage and playground at this time. Austin then asks, I am curious about the role of intention in polarization, and I'll state two examples. One, consider a person who does good deeds, but their intention is to polarize so that they can be harvestable. Or two, somebody who has a genuine desire to simply help, but in doing so inadvertently causes harm and disharmony in their actions. How does the intention of the individual inform the polarity of that person's path? Quo says we would respond by suggesting that within this third density illusion, which is nested beyond the veil of forgetting, that intentions are everything. For you do not know or understand the nature of the reality in which you inhabit. It is of the one Creator. It is completely imbued in every iota of its existence with the one, and yet this basic fact of unity is concealed for most of your third density companions, and each, as it becomes conscious of the seeking process, desires, intends, wishes to be of service to others. And as you say many times, this results in what indeed seems to be service to others, to the outer eye, to the inner eye, to any observer of the process. And yet at some point, it may be that such service is just as strongly desired, and yet results in what to the inner eye, the outer eye, and any observer seems to be that which is disharmonious. The intentions in both cases were to serve the one in all things. And in some fashion, at the level of the overview, this is always the case, for always is the Creator served by any action, by any intention, by any outcome. And yet, at the level of the third density experience, what is the difference when the outcome seems so disparate, so difficult, so disharmonious? That, we may suggest, can never truly be known, for what seems in one moment to be a great difficulty, the product of intention gone astray, yet at some point in the future, for this entity that has suffered this disharmony, may provide it with just that spark of inspiration that moves it forward along the path of service to others and realization of the one within. In both cases, the intention is the most important ingredient, for it is all that you can truly know what your intention is. If the product of your intention varies across the spectrum from good to bad, so-called, then that is the one Creator serving the one Creator, and the one Creator experiencing what you may call opportunities for growth, catalysts that may be processed in a fashion that produces a greater knowledge of the small self becoming the greater self. For you, not all things. You are the one. You teach the one learns from you, and you learn from the one. There is no true difference. And in a final question, Austin asks, thank you. Yes, throughout many years that the Confederation has been interacting with our planet, your approach has changed somewhat drastically, spanning from walking among us and manifesting massive pyramids with thought to what we currently experience, which I understand is that the Confederation is hesitant to even appear in the sky as UFOs. So I'm wondering if you could let us know a little bit about the Confederation's current approach and what your relationship is with our planet right now, and also how we as seekers and wanderers can help aid the Confederation in their mission on this planet. Quo says we appreciate these feelings of concern and somewhat, we may say, doubt of previous interactions between various members of the Confederation and the population on your planet. For you upon this planet Earth are a portion of a great variety of sources of mind, body, spirits, who have incarnated here from many places within the universe about you, and many, many different types of abilities to comprehend. Assistance that has been offered by the Confederation have the unfortunate result of not being able to blend the vibrations of the culture of the time with the attempts of the Confederation to serve various cultures throughout time when walking among you was possible. Because of the isolation of cultures and the rarity of the understanding of the unity in these cultures. This we did with hopes of offering ourselves, our thoughts, and our perceptions in a manner which might be of the greatest possible service, and yet in our naivete, we were making assumptions that proved untrue, as our words and thoughts were distorted in ways that necessitated our continued interaction in other means with your cultures. Thusly, as time has progressed and the population of the planet has grown, we have found that the more obvious interactions, such as walking among you, appearing in our craft that you call unidentified flying objects, has been put on the back burner, shall we say, for there has been much misperception of our intentions, and again, our intentions in some cases were misinformed and naive. Thus, we have taken the metaphysical approach of becoming more, what you would say, we search for the right word here, unperceived, not clearly visible, beginning to move into realms of the sleep and dreams in which our presence is but barely perceived upon a conscious level, and yet subconsciously is able to inculcate thoughts within the subconscious mind that are seeds that grow into a yearning to know more of that which is, that which the self is, that journey the self is upon. And such inspirations are hoped to become fruitful in the production of the movement of consciousness in its expansion within each entity which we are able to contact in this manner. Of course, as you are well aware, one of the most treasured means of contact that we have with your entities is within groups such as this one, where we are able to speak a philosophy of unity, of love, of light, of direction, of service to others, of seeing the Creator in all, of becoming the Creator, of sharing this great knowledge with all those about you. And this is what we treasure most greatly at this time. For those previous attempts at service that we offered had more limited results and positive products. It is something that we have learned for all of life. In each density of experience is a process of learning, growth, and illumination that goes on forever. We are also those who learn and those who teach, as are you. So my friends, we will say to you, we hope to inspire you in some way to become teachers of others and to learn from others as we learn from you and you from us. At this time, we shall take our leave of this instrument and of this group, thanking each, as always, for inviting our presence. We are so inspired to be here among you, who make your journeys through this dense third density illusion with such great joy, such honor, such perseverance. You are definitely teachers to us. We are known to you as Quo. We leave you now in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Adonai, Vasu, Boragas. And this concludes these two channeling sessions. Reason that these spoke to me, they're very current. There was a little bit of a break there with some of the channelings, and it's nice to get some newer channelings in 2021 and to see where they're taking this. It's good to see that Quo is still around after the pandemic. There was a long break that they had in doing these channelings. This is really answering a very important question for what's happening in our present moment right now. When you turn on the news, when you follow politics, when you follow anything that's going on in the world right now, there are so many little reality bubbles, and people are living in their own crazy worlds with unbelievably bizarre theories and beliefs about the world that are utterly bizarre and crazy and ridiculous. And though I say there is no fiction, many are choosing to live in bizarrely unusual fictional worlds that I would choose not to live in. And when I see these people out there, I'm human. I see them as ignorant, as ridiculous, and there's a little part of me that criticizes them, can't stand the hate that they express, the terrible things that they do when they kill. And I see this, and it hurts my heart, the damage that they're doing with the anger that they're producing, and I judge them. It's a very important question. How do I find unity when I am around so many people that believe so many crazy things, and they don't listen, and their minds cannot be changed? One of the most powerful things that you can do is to really, like they talk about in here, put yourself in someone's shoes. Try the writing exercise. There's somebody that you hate. What I want you to do is write out, if you can, but think about it at a minimum. If you were writing out a first-person perspective of this person that you hate, wake up in the morning, brush your teeth with them, feel their body, if it's gigantic, whatever it is, hear them laugh, understand where they're coming from. Try to go into their history, feel their families. The more and more you focus on this, no matter how much you dislike them, you'll start to understand them. That's where the unity is. The unity does not mean that you support them, but it's an embracing of the idea that what they are and their beliefs and their actions are within you. This awareness is very hard. It's hard to take when you see, for instance, a terrible serial killer out there, or a horrific racist, or rapist, or, Adolf Hitler. How is he within me? How is that? There's no way. I utterly despise the terrible things that Hitler did. So this unity is very hard. It's easy to make cliches about the oneness and the unity, but this is a very particular question that is a very particular part of the density of this illusion and how difficult it is. With politics right now being accelerated by outside actors, psyops that are trying to invoke and utilize mass media. We have streams of information that you can't trust, weird, bizarre stuff, weird advertising campaigns and keyword mentions, and it's so ridiculous. But at the same time, you do a disservice to yourself when you say, I'm just going to not watch that stuff. I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to read. I'm just going to go native. I'm going to go and forget about my phone, forget about my computer. You're breaking yourself off from the rest of the world when you do that. And you may not be of true service to people. So you have to find this balance. And you need to find a way not to pull yourself into an echo chamber where you're only hearing positive things about what you want, and you're not listening to the other side. Because then you become more and more shocked when the other side comes around and starts talking their bizarre truths to you. Where is the love? And in the process of finding love for them, in whatever way, however ridiculous it can be, perhaps we can heal them. Perhaps we can change them. And perhaps we can imagine something different about them. If we're using the Neville Goddard material, then we can see that they're just in a state. Change their state. We have that power in this awareness level, and then we can be of service just by imagining something different for them. Because when we reach that point where we see that they are us, that's when we can imagine for them. But only when we see that they are us. So you can imagine all day long for someone, but if you do not feel that connection, it won't work, I don't think, in my own experience. That's why in many of Neville's lectures, people have techniques where they go into the body of the person. They drive their car, they feel their little body or their big body. And in so doing, they connect themselves, and then they imagine as if it is them. So there is a process in understanding this unity which gives us the ability to be of service. And so we have to confront the shadow. It's going to be there. We are wonderful and terrible at the same time. And there are parts of our dark shadow that we have chosen to forget, to not talk about, to ignore, that are going to come to the surface as the veil is lifted. The key element of fourth density is the veil between the subconscious and conscious are lifted. And as that happens, we become aware of the Akashic, we become aware of the larger level of subconscious, and then we become aware of everyone's shadow. Becoming aware of your own shadow is the beginning process of becoming aware of the world shadow. In the process of becoming aware of the world shadow, we can reimagine the world, because the world is in a state. The world is in a third density state, and we're imagining it moving into a fourth density state. And together, collectively, with the collective imagination as a social memory complex, we change the state of this planet. And the veil is lifted, and the light and love comes to a different level. So I would love to get your impressions and opinions of this newer material. Of course, we're going to return to quote, we always will. I learned so much and it's so much to read. So please, let me know what you think. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.